And you're watching Sporting Icons.
Triple D, Daniel Dubois, 15-0, 14 by knockout. Only going distance to once with journeyman Kevin Kingpin Johnson, which I was very happy with. I know a lot of people weren't, but I was actually happy with because it showed that he can go later on in the rounds, and that's something that I really want to see. But of course, Kevin Johnson wasn't really throwing punches back, so how good is his engine really? We don't know. Being the aggressor, we know Dubois can go the distance, so that's another tick for him. Either way, it is what it is. Now, the reason I'm doing this video is because I feel that I need to clarify a couple of points from the last video with Daniel Dubois. Even though I did clarify it in that video, but I clarified it as the video was closing down, so a little bit later in the video. Of course, not everybody watches every second, every minute of every video that you do. Most people, I think, have the attention span to last maybe a minute or two per video. I am exactly the same, okay? When I watch other people's videos, that's pretty much the duration that I do, unless I'm captivated, okay? Then it's different. So I'm doing this one to clarify a couple of points, because I said that I was worried the fact that Daniel Dubois was being mentioned by Frank Warren in the same breath as Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, Dillian Whyte, and so forth and so forth. Now, it's all very well Frank Warren doing that, and that's his job, okay? So him mentioning his fighters' names in the same breath as his other ones is promotion. That's what Frank Warren's supposed to do. So we can't criticize Frank Warren too much for it. We can only really criticize it if he actually goes through with it, okay? Because for me, I think the way that Daniel Dubois has been built so far is brilliant. I've said it before and I'll say it again, that when Daniel Dubois signed with Frank Warren, there was so much, I felt, bitterness and jealousy from Frank Warren to Matchroom, because obviously they had Joshua. Joshua was then becoming a huge star, pay-per-view star. Frank Warren wanted that too. Daniel Dubois was his ticket to do so. But of course, Dubois being very young, and he did have a pretty good amateur career. I think people forget that. People say that he's a prospect, he hasn't really had too many fights. Well, he's had double the amount of amateur fights than Anthony Joshua, double the amount of fights as Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, and he's had 30, 40 times more fights than what Dillian Whyte had as an amateur. So amateur side, he's okay with that one. Of course, he doesn't have the Olympic pedigree, and that's fine. But as a pro, 15-0, with the level of opposition that he's been fighting, this is why I mentioned, and I'm doing this video because I did mention that I was worried that he was going to be, or potentially with the level of opposition that he's fighting now to who they're talking about him fighting, reminded me a lot of Frank Bruno. Of course, when I'm a kid, or when I was a kid, sorry, I was a huge fan of Frank Bruno. Now, I wasn't mad on boxing when I was a small kid, not at all, but for me, I knew who Frank Bruno was. A lot of it was because of the Des O'Connor shows and the Freddie Starr and the pantomimes, all that kind of stuff. But people knew who Frank Bruno was. He was the darling of British sport, I suppose, because of his personality, because of the way he was, and whatever else. So that's not the comparison. Daniel Dubois is polar opposite in characteristics. Daniel Dubois, very plain, very quiet, very shy. Okay, but he's a fighting machine in the ring, which is what is really the important thing. But when Frank Bruno was coming through, many of you guys who were in and around that era will know exactly what I'm talking about, where he was fighting the same kind of level of opposition of what Daniel Dubois was. Then he'd get an opportunity and he'd fall short on a couple of occasions. So he'd fall short, he'd go back down fighting the journeymen, the gatekeepers, keep on doing that. Then another opportunity, spike right the way up, and he'll be gassing out and obviously getting chinned. So that was my concern with Daniel Dubois because of the level of opposition that he's been fighting. Granted, he does have a Joe Joyce fight coming up next, or for all intents and purposes, that's what we're led to believe. So that will be a bit of an acid test for him, or you would presume. But again, much like Daniel Dubois, we don't know how good Joe Joyce is. So him blasting out Joe Joyce, what kind of measuring stick is that? For me, their resumes are quite similar, although I do think that Joe Joyce has fought the better opposition, in my honest opinion. But still, I think both guys have been going along correctly, to be honest with you. Daniel Dubois, he's going through the belts, you know, the British, the Commonwealth. Of course, next is going to be fighting for the European. That's pretty much how people like it to happen. It doesn't need to go that way. Obviously, look at the likes of Amir Khan. He didn't go that route. Carl Froch, he didn't go that route, and quite a few others. So Daniel Dubois doing it, it's all good for his experience. But you put him in with the kind of level that he's been fighting. I mean, for me, his best wins are probably Nathan Gorman or a Tom Little. maybe a Fujimoto. Okay, and as we know with Nathan Gorman, he wasn't really at the races in that fight because of everything that he was going through in camp due to what was going on with his family, his children, and everything. So we don't know how good Dan Dubois is. Is he the chosen one? Well, let's hope so. Of course, he's a Brit. You know, he's got my support. I'm sure he's got most of your support and what have you. But he's not the only one. You got him and a whole plethora of other heavyweights coming through, like Fabio Wardley, who's a very good friend of this channel. Fraser Clark, he's also a good friend of this channel as well. And of course, my very good friend in Stephen Robinson, he's a 3-0 heavyweight. He's looking the real deal, to be honest with you. But are you sensing the bias there? Of course. But my point is that there are lots and lots of heavyweights out there. For me, who's it going to be? I don't know. Time will tell. Is Dan Dubois the chosen one? Neo from the Matrix, the next Messiah? We'll have to wait and see on that one. But if he's going to be fighting the Richard Lartes and that of the world, and this Ricardo Schneiders, who he fought last time, and then you put him in there with, say, Usyk, for example, I'm not too sure that's a good move. Because even though at this point he probably would have had the Joe Joyce fight, again, I don't even know if he's the favourite for that fight, to be honest with you. I have no idea. For me, I see that as a pretty 50-50 fight. Because we don't know how good either one of them are. Both of them can end each other, that's for sure. And I think both of them can be ended as well. We've seen Dan Dubois, he got rocked to his boots by Richard Lartes momentarily, but he recovered very, very quickly and got him out of there in round number 4. Joe Joyce, of course, he's been gut-checked, literally gut-checked by Brian Jennings with that body shot. So both of them do have vulnerabilities, and they're supposed to have vulnerabilities at this stage of their professional career. Of course they are. But this is why I was saying, the way that Frank Bruno was doing it, I mean, eventually he got the world title, which is fantastic, but will Dan Dubois ever become world champion? I would think so, especially being a Frank Warren fighter with Frank Warren's relationship with the WBO. That's why he's ranked so high, because he's with Frank Warren. If he was with any other promoter outside of Bob Arum, he wouldn't be number 2 or number 3 in the WBO. It wouldn't be happening, okay? So, yes, at some point, he's probably going to become WBO champion. But is he going to go on to become the darling of British boxing, the heavyweight king of British boxing, the heavyweight king of world boxing? Well, these are the kind of things that we can have a prediction for, but ultimately we don't know. You know, you have to remember this is the heavyweight division. Many, many things and strange turnings left and strange turnings right have happened in the heavyweight division, so you never know. But of course, fingers crossed for him, and I'll always support him and I always want him to win. Of course, unless he's going to be fighting a fellow Brit, then I don't really care who wins. Okay, with Joe Joyce, Dan Dubois, I'm on the fence with it, okay? May the best man win. Commiserations to the loser, that's how it is. But I think with Daniel Dubois, is he the chosen one? Is he going to be the next one? I don't know. If he is going to be, what you don't do is fight Richard Lartes and Ricardo Schneiders and then throw him in there with an Usyk, because Usyk will box your ears off. He will tie you down and stop you late on. That's what I think would happen with him and Alexander Usyk. Don't get me wrong, if Dubois somehow catches Usyk, then Usyk is going to sleep. And of course, if Dan Dubois ends up fighting Usyk, of course, I'm team Daniel Dubois all the way. Of course I am, he's a Brit. So that's my point. That's what I want to clarify, that even though I wasn't comparing him to Bruno, I was saying that the level that he's fighting and the jump up that Frank Warren wants him to do, that's what worries me. And I was comparing it with what happened with Bruno. I think if Bruno had gone through the levels like he was supposed to have done, when eventually he got his opportunities, he'd have been more than ready for it, but he just wasn't. And that's what I'm worried about with Daniel Dubois. But as I said, maybe the acid test with Joe Joyce is coming up. For me, I want to see Joe Joyce put it on him. If Dan Dubois is going to be the real deal, I want to see Dan Dubois go through hell and back and come through it. Then we know if Dan Dubois is ready or not. Because it's one thing being the aggressor for 10, 12 rounds. It's another thing when you're getting battered around, maybe even hit the canvas. There's a lot more to it than that. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it all. Obviously, you let me know, do you think that Dan Dubois is going to be the real deal? Do you want him to be the real deal? What kind of level of opposition do you think he needs to do? Do you think just by fighting Joe Joyce, that will be the benchmark as to whether or not he's ready? Or do you think he needs another couple more in and around that kind of level? And again, why is he not mentioning the names of, say, Luis Ortiz or Andy Ruiz Jr. or Ajit Kabiel, these kind of guys? Why are they not mentioning these kind of guys? Why are they only mentioning the matchroom fighters? Why is that? I think we know why. Anyway, drop your thoughts below about it, click thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll catch you all on the next video.